Beth, good morning. Sean indicated that he's running about 10 minutes late.
Okay.
So just an FYI.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. For those that are watching, I don't know if we have any attendees here yet, but we will start in about 7 minutes. We are running about 10 minutes late today.
Hey everyone, sorry I'm a little bit late. Let me just pull up my agenda here. All right, we'll start off our meeting today with public comment. Anybody come here today to make a public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and roll right into commissioner updates. What kind of important county business did you conduct when you were in Hawaii, Randy?
The only thing I bring back is that probably the most interesting encounter I had in Hawaii, I have had about 3 or 4 times while I was there that would relate to county business. And it was that there were several places that from the flows, the lava flows erupted in 2018, the roads had been wiped out and they'd fixed most of them, but there were 2 sections that weren't. And all I found out that was everybody was mad at the county commissioners because they hadn't fixed the roads yet since the volcano blew. And there was something about that I found really comical every time I heard it. And I just wanted to bring it back and share it with you that it's the same everywhere, no matter what's,
Yeah,
it's the damn county commissioners.
you were probably partly to blame just being there.
That's what I was thinking. I rode out to the end. I rode out to the end of all the lava flows where the roads ended. And it was a pretty magnificent sight. I'll give you that. It makes snowstorms and muddy roads look like child's play, for sure.
That was on the Big Island, I take it?
Yes, we were on the Big Island and we were on the southeast corner in the Puna district. Had a friend that had a place down on Beach Road. It's pretty interesting because it's the poorest island and the poorest part of the poorest island, and then the island is even more so than we are totally tourist oriented. Its entire economy. And so a lot of the same things we talk about here were topics of conversation there everywhere you went.
Any official business to mention before we move on to
I don't
George?
think so today.
Okay, what do you got, George?
Just a couple of quick heads up. We have the Regional Opioid Committee met, gave ourselves a name. We're GROC, the Gateway to the Rockies Opioid Council. We have, this may have already come up, June 23rd. We're doing an event to do some public engagement and make sure our process is right. It's an all-day event, 9 to 3. We have not yet picked a location. It's down to Red Rocks Community College or the Arvada Center. I know that Human Service Public Health Directors and County Commissioners will be invited. And more to come on that, but wanted to give you a heads up. Couple things related to that. We have until the end of June, so this is just a quick heads up to decide. So we're getting a direct share of funding, and then there's funding that's going to the region that we set up.
Mm-hmm.
We have until the end of June to decide if we want to keep our direct share or put it into the council's funding. There is a reporting requirement if we decide to keep it. And so we'll want to think through that. It's a decision that we can make annually. If we can always change our mind. And we'll have more solid numbers in a couple weeks as to what our actual allocations will be. So I just wanted to give you a quick heads up on that. Also want to let you know that Lindsay Valdez with CCEDC has reached out to me She's very interested in what I think it's the Southeast Housing Collaborative is doing around ARPA money. And has asked for me to meet with them and is going to invite some folks from some municipalities. Brian, we haven't talked about this, but I probably would invite Brian and Amy if it could make their calendars. I don't know what's going to come out of it. I'm just going to listen and be inspired, maybe. Oh, the other thing, this is sometime in May, we will have to, and Peter knows about this, we'll bring the agreement, the MOU for that region to the board. And that's when we would formally appoint the members of that committee. I know in the past, we've talked about who they would be. It's, human service directors, public health directors, that kind of thing. We have the appointment authority, so we would just need to make that formal once the MOU is formal. And I think that's all I got for you this morning.
Okay. I don't have too much. The Semtech and the Public Policy and Finance Committee have been talking about the new ambulance bill that's I think it's going to drop today or maybe tomorrow. Essentially, it will create a task force to study sustainability of the EMS system statewide. I think we probably all remember that EMS is not actually a statutorily required service. And historically, it's all been kind of managed at the county level. And Colorado is the very last state that hasn't moved to state licensing of ambulances and a little bit more of an oversight role for the state. So anyway, I do support the bill. I think it's a good idea. And there's conversations that have been going on in CCI. And then yesterday we had a special meeting of the Public Policy and Finance Subcommittee or committee to approve writing a letter, presumably to the legislature and the governor, I imagine. But in terms of what's going on at the end of the session, that's sort of the only thing that I really have any involvement with. And I know the collective bargaining thing started today, and I'll be kind of keeping an eye on that. I'm not sure how I probably do know how I feel about it, but it's probably not something that we're going to agree on. So I don't know what we'll do about that one, if anything. And
yeah, it's not common for us to take positions as a board on stuff like this. I support the ability for labor to organize and have its, do what they can to improve their conditions. I think that a lot of counties treat their employees, and I'd like to think including ours, treat their employees fairly well from a perspective of the environment and the pay and everything else. I don't know if that's true for every county. And so I don't know if I'll be in support of the bill. I probably won't oppose it outright. I know CCAT has worked really hard to be at the table and make it something that can work for counties. And there's been a lot of changes to the bill based on those negotiations.
Yeah, I kind of am in a similar place to where George is. I support the right for collective bargaining for, pretty much all people. There's not a lot of difference between being in a union and being in a corporation. It's a group of people that leverage their common weight economically or politically to better their lot. So it's a business deal. Having had a bunch of employees myself, I know employment relationships. It's a business deal between the employer and the worker. And a lot of employers are corporations, and the people, management is legally bound for good cause to keep their profits high, their costs low, their revenues high, and they do what they can because they have to do that for the shareholders, and that's a good thing. And I just think that the people on the other side of the business deal have a right to leverage their stuff. That said, I know at CCAT they're a consensus organization, and there's no way that they're going to come to an opposed position. And right now, I'm guessing, looking at it, that it's very, very unlikely they're going to come to a support position. They're probably going to be in a monitor or neutral position when it's over. CCI is likely to oppose. And there are elements of it that I still am not totally happy with either, of that particular bill. So it's nothing we get down and grovel in the mud and bite each other's ears off over, I'm sure. So anyway.
Just one quick clarification. CCI did take a position of oppose last week.
I was aware of that. I didn't think I said they were supporting. They were I thought CCI's in oppose. CCAT was what I think I said or meant to say, was not in a position to take an oppose on it. So just because of their consensus model, and they're not going to find, it's a consensus -2 model, and there's going to be at least 2 people or more who will not come to an opposed position or a support position. I think probably at CCAT, there's some possibility of a support there, but
Yeah, I thought I had heard you say CCI would likely oppose it, and I just wanted to make sure you knew that they already had.
Yeah, I know CCI is, as I just said. Thanks. And if I misspoke, I'm still suffering the effects of jet lag. It's hard to crawl out of bed this morning.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that really kind of directly affects the county. Well, I'm sure there are, but nothing that's I think that we need to take any positions or talk too much about.
Yeah, Sean, if I could just ask about the other one about EMS. Personally, I don't see that bill as a problem especially for Clear Creek County. I guess one of my thoughts, and it's and I also support that. I think just like building codes and stuff like that, I think we need to have strong leadership from a highly technical organization or somewhere else like the state that has the bandwidth to create and license or permit stuff like that. My only concern would be for those counties, and Clear Creek used to be one of those counties that had so little resource to be able to provide ambulance service, that at one point we were a suburban and some people that had some EMT training, and that was about it. And I'm guessing, and of course we've come a long ways from there, and I don't think our unit would have any problem at all passing state standards. I'm guessing that there are places that don't have that luxury or don't have that ability, and some method of transport and help is better than is better than none. And I just wonder what I'm assuming that within this legislation, there's going to be the ability to help those counties along and move them along without causing them to lose their ability to transport people that are in trouble or have to have somebody come from a long ways away, so far away to do it that it's worse than, it's worse than the situation that they had. So is there not, I don't think we have time to talk about it obviously here today, but I don't have enough information on it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you like the 2-minute answer, 2-minute or less answer, which is that is exactly those are the questions that I was asking Randy Kuykendall, who's the former director of the EMS division of CDPHE, because for 5 years I've been scoring the grant applications, and there's some systems that literally have hundreds of square miles they're responsible for administering and delivering EMS service, and their entire budget is less than the money it would take to pay one FTE, like $40,000 or $50,000. I mean, it's shocking how different it is from place to place. And I don't think that the statewide licensing is necessarily going to change anything. They're not going to be required to drive their license to Denver or anything like their ambulance to Denver. And there's certainly a stated desire not to cause any financial harm. And the part of the bill that actually excites me is the task force, because the task force is going to look at sustainability, because one of the things that's really complicated or difficult is those same people who are responsible for managing a shoestring operation don't typically have any financial training, or they don't have any grant writing skills. And so the programs the state's providing now, which we've taken advantage of, at least our EMS side, I don't think our fire has, they don't even have the wherewithal or the time or capacity to ask for money, and they end up with very, very little resources and hand-me-downs from wealthier departments. So that's the part of it I said that I'm pretty interested in it. And I'll probably maybe even see about volunteering for that task force. We'll see.
Good.
But Brian, what do you have for us today?
First, public thank you to Suzanne Boscia. Yesterday, Suzanne facilitated an all-day meeting along with the Colorado Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management and emergency preparedness assessment of our overall county. And it included members of the fire authority, all the municipalities, law enforcement, sheriff's office staff, and several of our county departments. And it was an interesting day. And they walked through 32 different core capabilities and assessed them. And they're in the areas of prevention and protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. And as you might imagine, we've got some work to do in some areas and we're doing well in others. So I just wanted to again say thank you to Suzanne for pulling that together. It was a good day. It was worth the full day of discussion that we had in the room. So again, thank you, Suzanne, for that. The other item I have is an update for Randy and a reminder for Sean and George that we did decide to postpone day 3 of our retreat next Monday. So we need to identify a new date. Sean, I know we need to give you some space given what's in your immediate future.
Actually, due to a combination of improving conditions and my own personal cowardice, I am postponing that surgery.
All right.
Next
So
week, I'm available anytime next week as a result of that after Monday.
Okay. So I was looking at the non-board meeting Tuesdays. So May 10th, May 24th,
Yeah.
June 14th.
The 24th, I'm not open. I know that.
You're not, you said?
Not on the 24th,
Okay.
right?
How does May 10 look?
I think it's good.
It's wide open for me.
All right, May 10 it is.
I did have
That's
one
all I
other
got.
really quick thing I wanted to mention for George's, or for Randy's benefit, and also you, Brian. We had some good introductory conversations yesterday at the commissioners and mayors meeting, and introduced kind of the concept of next steps for multi-jurisdictional housing authority, and also probably engaging the towns more directly in the fire authority IGA conversations.
Good.
Actually, I have one more item that Beth just handed me. We received an email from the school district. I guess there's a meeting on the schedule for May 12th between the Board of Education and the county commissioners. Do you all have that on your schedule?
Nope, but I have my mornings open because it's usually at like 10 o'clock or something like that, 9 or 10. We used to do them quarterly, didn't we, before COVID?
So Beth, is this an invitation to attend their meeting?
Yes, usually we go to their meeting or attend via Zoom and talk about some mutual topics of interest. I was just seeing, yeah, the recurring invite didn't pop up on my computer, but I think Sean is right. It's usually like 10 or 10:30 in the morning. And I think you guys usually stay for half hour or maybe an hour.
Hour-ish, yeah, I think.
Yeah. So,
I'm good on that day. Brian and I have a meeting at 11 o'clock, but we can move that around.
I will get a meeting invite for you to send to put on your calendars. And if you have any topics you want to discuss, please let me know so I can send them through to Q's team.
Okay.
All right, that's it. That's it for me.
Okay. And look at that, 2 minutes until 9 o'clock. Go ahead.
Since we have the 2 minutes, some things that are on my mind that would probably are on all of our minds related to the school district are just an update on the childcare process, the employer-based childcare. I don't think we've spoken directly about that in a joint meeting, and that would be nice. The other thing is I wouldn't mind, I don't know the extent to which they have put a lot of thought into this, but I think early is better to start talking about what they might want to do with Carlson Elementary and how the county might be involved in being a partner. I know there's a big need for us to have housing that's got a price commitment on it, for a promise from developers to charge a price our workforce can afford. And I think that's our next big opportunity to make some progress there.
Okay. Anything else before we roll into our CHAPS topic? All right, well, it's 9 o'clock or nearly so. Hey, Tim, we have an agenda item. Doesn't look like it's a action item, but an informational presentation on the CHAPS process. I looked at all the materials and it looks like this is just purely an informational session to make sure that the commissioners were all aware of what's going on in that area. So with that said, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sean. So presenting today will be Andrea. She is spearheading our CHAPS project here in the county. And so I will turn it over to Andrea.
Hi. I think I have to share my screen, so I have to figure that out.
It's at the bottom center green button, share screen, and then it'll show you all your open screens, and you want to select the PowerPoint one.
Cool. Thank you.
There you go.
Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay. Everyone can see that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I've been spearheading this process, which is a new process to me. So I'm living and breathing everything CHAPS, but it's been a really good experience and I've learned so much. So CHAPS is something that we are required to do. And so I'm just going to kind of just do an overview of what it is and where we're at in the process. So to understand CHAPS, you really have to understand what public health is. And recently, CDPHE kind of revamped the role of public health. So it's broken down into what our capabilities are and then what our foundational services are. And I'm not going to read through a lot of this in detail, but essentially we have to be able to have the ability to assess and plan, to communicate, to be involved in policy, to build partnerships in order to do our core foundational services, which are the ones on the right. Those core services are the communicable disease prevention, which we all know is where COVID fell under, the environmental health side of things. We have maternal, child, family health, chronic disease, behavioral health, and access to healthcare. So how I understand public health is it's not like a hospital where you're only, responsible for a handful of people on your shift. In public health, you are responsible for an entire county, and it's a very big deal. So these are the older essential public health services, so we don't need to address those. The ones on the previous page are the updated ones. So what is CHAPS? It's the Colorado Public Health Assessment and Planning System. Essentially, it's a standardized tool that every public health agency, every county in the state of Colorado is responsible for. And it's basically our way of being held accountable for assessing the entire county and identifying what the needs are and then putting a plan in place to address them. And CHAPS came out of the Colorado Public Health Act in 2008. And part of those requirements, again, are assessing and identifying what the needs are in the county. and putting services in place around those. So there's 8 phases to the CHAPS, and it's in a 5-year cycle. So we're starting the new cycle. The last cycle was from 2017 to 2022. So the timelines aren't hard and fast. There's definitely some flexibility in them, but of course we have a timeline to kind of work within those guidelines, so we kind of stay on task. So phases 1 and 2 essentially are just laying it out there, the 5-year cycle, putting a timeline in place, a budget in place, who needs to be involved, and then getting an advisory committee together. And part of that advisory committee is engaging essential stakeholders and inviting them into the advisory committee. And with a county of our size, generally a committee is about 5 or 6 people. And right now we have about 12 people. So I think that's exciting, and it shows that there's a lot of people that want to be involved in this process. So again, it's not a hard and fast. It doesn't have to be 5 to 6, but like I said, we do have a larger advisory committee. And then phase 3 through 5 is a big chunk of this process. And so right now we have it where I want to have it try to be completed around December of this year. But again, we may bump that out a little bit. And then phase 6, putting the plan in place, is generally going to be early next spring of 2023. And then 7 and 8, we will continue over the next 2 or 3 years before we start the next cycle. So a little bit about the previous CHAPS process that they conducted. They did identify 3 priority issues, and they were youth mental health, youth substance abuse, and access to care. And this was before we had the health and wellness building. So since then, we've done some stuff to fix the access to care by having the new building and Centura and other departments involved in that building. And then with Mountain Youth, they have built a lot of more programming around youth substance abuse and youth mental health. So they're really the hub for working with that. And then the school district has a behavioral health person that's working under a grant to also identify and work with some of these issues. So those were all identified in the previous CHAP. So kind of where we are now, as I mentioned, we have the Mountain Youth Network. They continue to have a pretty robust programming around youth in our county. We have the brand new building, which I'm very grateful for. It is a very nice building. It's nice to have other disciplines and departments in there. We have the EMS department is working on a really big program called the Community Paramedic Program, where they are going to be able to do home care visits to people in need, so they don't have to necessarily go down the hill or out of the county for services. It could be a one-time visit or an ongoing visit. But they are still in the planning stages of that. And that's something that public health is working in conjunction with the EMS department. We are also working on an STI rollout program with the state, where we'll be able to offer free HIV and STI testing to high-risk populations in our county. It's free. And then, of course, you're all aware of the survey that Omni did for behavioral health. And so there was a lot of really good things that came from that. And hopefully we'll be able to hire a navigator as they recommended from that survey. And then we continue to offer our wellness clinic out of public health, where we can do basic vitals, check blood pressures, check people's blood sugar levels and A1C to see if they're pre-diabetic, and to look at cholesterol levels. And then we have our WIC program, which is Women, Infant, Children. And that's a very big program for pregnant women and women with small children. And it's very nutritional based to make sure that they have the right nutritional needs. And then we are in the process of getting an electronic medical record system, which is very exciting. So currently, as I mentioned earlier, we completed phases 1 and 2. of the CHAP cycle. So we are currently in phase 3 through 5, which I said is basically the meat and potatoes of this process. And because it is also new to me, like I said, that timeline of trying to get this done by December is probably going to be bumped out because it is a very thorough and comprehensive process. So essentially what it is first you do a quantitative data poll. So you take all of the data that you can possibly find for Clear Creek County and kind of gather all of that. And then you, with your advisory team, kind of identify what the top 3 to 5 priorities are. And then you do more of a quantitative study where you dive in and do some interviews and more thorough surveys in the community to further identify what those priorities mean to the community and what we can do as far as programming goes. So we do have some funding, which is exciting, and we always are grateful for any money that we can have to help through this process. So we did apply for a preventative block grant, which is through the Office of Planning through CDPHE, and it is a grant that we've had in previous years. We are able to apply for it annually. So we did get an award for it. So that's exciting. And there's also another grant under the maternal child health program through the state. And this year they allowed people that are in their CHAP cycle to use that funding for CHAPs to look more thoroughly at maternal child health issues. So that's also very exciting. So kind of what's next is, like I said, we're just going to continue to be in that assessment phase of CHAPS, just diving in. We've done a lot of the quantitative data poll. So we're going to start looking at more of the qualitative side of things. We did, with some of our funding, hire a CHAP consultant who specializes in this and has helped many counties in the state kind of walk through this process. And so we're trying to get her on board in the next week or two. So she's going to help us do a more thorough assessment and kind of walk me through this process. And then we're going to be doing a public health analysis of all of our current services, what we're offering. It's called a capacity assessment, and it's part of the phases 3 through 5 in the CHAP cycle. And again, essentially, we just have to kind of look at what we're currently doing. Is it working? Does it make financial sense? You know, so just kind of assess what we're doing. And that's where we are at.
Thanks for that, Andrea. And is there anything that your team needs from the Board of County Commissioners? And I see Brian has raised his hand also.
Yeah, I was just going to comment to Andrea and Tim. I think, and they correct me if I'm wrong, I think what they're looking for is some input from all of you with respect to the process itself and any thoughts on the assessment, et cetera. I know at least a couple of you wanted to see this before we got too far out into the community with our assessment. So I think this is an opportunity for you all to weigh in.
Okay, George, Randy.
I don't have any particular direction. I'm glad we're doing it again. I know we have to, and it's time. And and personally, I'm expecting to find some of the same results, but also a lot of the improvements that you've identified throughout. I think we've taken steps and gotten part of the way there to do a lot of the things we need to do. A lot of it because of COVID, that we've expanded our capacity, and then the health clinic, as you said. And but in terms of offering any redirection advice or anything like that, consultation, I have none.
I do have one question. I remember the initial surveys, and if memory serves me, they seem to be kind of self-reported and maybe not completely scientific when it came to the data we were getting from the kids in our community. I'm just wondering if, and it was kind of the first time we did it, so I thought that was better than no data at all. But it looked, I know I've heard that there are certain social pressures and whatnot, and you have to take that kind of data a little bit with a grain of salt. So I'm just sort of curious what the state of our data gathering is now as compared to when we started doing this.
I can speak to that. So that's essentially why you do quantitative and qualitative. Yeah, so you can kind of pull it all together and make sense of it. And that's why you have an advisory committee, so you don't have a biased lens on it. And then also that's why we're bringing in this consultant to also help guide that process, because I really do want it to be an organic, thorough process where we're truly looking at this whole county and saying, hey, you know, what are the true needs of this county based on the science and data and based on, you know, what our community is telling us. So it can't be one or the other. You can't just look at just the, you know, the quantitative or the qualitative. You have to marry the two together and make sense of it.
And to just to add on to that, Sean, to answer your question, a lot of the data that we're getting initially is data directly from the state. So for instance, the rate of diabetes, the rate of hypertension, the rate of all these sorts of things within, or have a clinical diagnosis of that within the county, right? Not terribly subjective in vaccination rates and all that sort of data that we're gathering from the state. So the data, quote unquote, that is going to fuel and to provide us some insight is multifaceted. It's both quantitative, qualitative data, clinical data. Basically, it's as complete a picture as we possibly can get. And then that's where the participant interviews in the broader survey that we might put out eventually is really trying to fine tune or dive into, I would say, what we might see in the broader data, right? And then really try to drive down into that. Mountain Youth Network has downloaded that survey data that the students did, which agree, you have to take it with a grain of salt in terms of what students report, you know, in terms of drug use, alcohol use, depression, all those sorts of things. And they're in the process of looking at that data. So it's really a combination of as much data as is out there, as Andrea said in the beginning, and really trying to bring all that in and make heads or tails of it, and then pull out the poignant pieces that we can do something about. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I remember when I saw that data, it was shocking to me. I think it almost looked like we were the, you know, cigarette smoking and nicotine champions across the state of Colorado, and I was hoping that that wasn't true.
And I'll add to that too, because again, like, it's about being responsible with the data that you're assessing. And that's why the consultant's really going to be helpful in this. And the data is ever being updated. I mean, a perfect example is in my last advisory committee meeting, we were talking about mortality, the top 6 mortality issues in Clear Creek. And when I got off the call and I went back onto that data site, they had literally updated it while I was on this meeting, and they changed. So, so you have to really, you know, do your best to make sure it's as updated as it possibly can. And then at some point you do have to make a decision like, okay, I can't spend every day updating this data. Like, this is the most recent and this is where we're going. But just know that too, that it is always being updated.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And I mean, you can't manage what you don't measure. So I think it's important that we're getting this data and that we have a process to kind of refine its accuracy. So thanks for letting us know about that.
I think George had his hand up a while ago, or was starting to go.
Yeah, on the self-assessment tool, I mean, I can't think of a better way to try to understand what folks are doing, or, you know, self-reporting, other than, I mean, like, you know, testing them or something, right? Which is sort of intrusive, and probably really expensive. So, and it's nice as you look at these surveys over the years, I think it gets more informative, right? And we did see that there was a big reduction in self-reported tobacco and drug use in Clear Creek as of the last one. And I haven't had a chance to dig into, I think they just released the latest one. I haven't had a chance to dig into it, but I've heard that, and none of us would be surprised to hear that behavioral health challenges are on the rise in our youth. So, and I mean, the timing is great, right, for us to do this because we've pretty dramatically altered our public health department. Since, coming into COVID, we had a single public health nurse and a combined public health human services department. So the timing is really good for us to figure out what our capacity looks like today, what we could do with that capacity, all that stuff. A question I have related to public outreach. It's really hard, I think, to get, and I don't know if I saw out of the last CHAPS process, a lot of focused effort on getting underserved populations, hearing their story. I'm thinking about low income folks, mobile home park residents. I don't know, I don't think I have a great handle on what those strategies would be other than just reaching out to them directly and personally to get that qualitative side. But I would ask that, and you probably are already thinking about this too. And so I would just maybe, rather than ask that you do it, support your efforts in being, paying particular attention to reaching out to folks who are hard to reach and have important stories to tell.
Right. I think it's important that, we're a small population, so you've got a small database to begin with. We've kind of made the joke and other issues that were kind of anecdotal by nature. It's a fact of life because of our numbers. It doesn't take too many people to create what statisticians would call a reasonably sized sampling, and when you're this small, and which means that trying to get out to the stuff the people that George is talking about is, it's a small population to begin with, so it takes a kind of a surgical effort to get out there and do it. It's not like a broad survey you can do. I think the only other thing that popped up in my head since we've been talking, I've been listening to the other commissioners, is that we did have, I recall a few years ago, our CHAPS assessment told us that our three top issues were behavioral health, and behavioral health in Clear Creek County. And notwithstanding the cigarette use and all the other stuff, tobacco. I think looking at our youth, knowing that we see trends with youth and behavioral health and mental health, going in crisis, not just in Clear Creek, but across the board, it happens everywhere. That being able to understand those in time together is important. And on the nicotine side, that's a particular area that I'd be interested to know how we're doing with our youth as well, especially with flavored products, nicotine products, and vaping. And I know that Mountain Youth Network knows there's a work on that particular issue, but it's been a kind of an epidemic in schools, down to much lower grades too. And if there's a way to have a better understanding of where we are, as small as we are and as surgical a sampling as that has to be in our community, it'd be nice to know that. Know what kind of a job we've got in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate all your comments. And George, to your point, that's what the advisory committee is, and it's double the size that's recommended, because we don't want to, if someone has interest to be a participant in that, we're more than welcoming. And I think we have a pretty robust group in terms of who's represented in the county, et cetera. But that's really where the individual surveys are, or the individual interviews, and those sorts of things that provide that opportunity to talk to individuals like you mentioned, because oftentimes they're the silent ones, but the ones with the most need. And so it's really important to get to them and make sure that we understand what that need is, and making sure that it's represented in the final product of what we find. So then that's the point of CHAPS really, is it's multifaceted. You're not going to find the answer in data only, qualitative data from the state, right? It's about approaching it from every different angle, and only then will you get as complete a picture as possible. And so that's really what we're going to do. And it's a 5-year process, because it's not a hurried process. It's going to take us a year or so to get the story straight. And then only then come up with a plan and how we're going to address what we find. So.
Okay. Thank you. And I mean, one of the versions of expertise that I think folks are more aware of these days is lived experience. And it's my hope that if you haven't already, that you would find some folks with lived experience from those communities to sit on that committee. Another thing that's on my mind is related to opioids. I think this is largely because we have opioid settlement dollars and an opportunity to address something. I know that the state of data collection in Clear Creek is not where it needs to be, I think, in terms of understanding the scale of our opioid problem. I anecdotally have the sense that opioids are here in my community, our communities, and would love to see even early. I think it would be helpful to me and well, Tim, you're on that committee as well, to our participation in that committee to, if you come across opioid data, to share that to us for use in that committee as we go, before the whole plan is released. So that's something on my mind.
Absolutely, George. And I think, I don't know if we're going to discover opioid specific, but there may be behavioral indications in the data of otherwise that would lead to that or suggest in that direction. But yeah, we're more than happy to share what it is we find and go from there.
Okay. And then there's just two other things on my mind. One is, I'm sure this is on everybody's mind, but we just built this wellness center, right? Which is an incredible opportunity and a really big challenge in terms of the vision that was had for the use of that building. And I know there are still vacant offices. And I think part of the reason for that is there's a need to make that vision for lots of different services specific, right, around who the partners are that we want to attract and all of that. And so I would hope that would be, a focus of this process as maybe our best opportunity and asset to really level up what we do in this community now that we have the capital in place.
I think you're saying that the CHAPS assessment will help inform the best uses of that space. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I'm hoping it would.
Right.
And so that's just something to observe. And then there was one other thing that popped into my head. It's not written in my notes. And then it popped out of my head. So really appreciate your work.
Yep. Any final comments, Tim, Andrea? Thanks again for keeping us informed. And I know we have a variety of executive session topics, or at least one or two to talk about today. Peter, do you think it might make sense to hop in there for a 10 o'clock item?
Definitely, that's great.
All right, then. Thanks again, Public Health. I move that the board moves into executive session to discuss the following matters.
Pursuant to CRS 246402A and E, for the county attorney to meet with the Board of County Commissioners for the purposes of receiving direction related to the lease, transfer, or sale of any real, personal, or other property interest in property located at 240 Colorado Highway 103, Idaho Springs, Colorado, and determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with regard to the aforementioned property. And I'll do one more just in case we can fit it in. Pursuant to CRS 24640224B and E, for the county attorney to meet with the Board of County Commissioners for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions pertaining to entering into a new intergovernmental agreement with the Clear Creek Fire Authority prior to or upon the expiration of the current agreement, and two, determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with regard to a new intergovernmental agreement with the Clear Creek Fire Authority.
Do I have a second?
So,
All right, we have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
And I will send a link.
Opposed,
Right
same
now.
sign. So the board will now move into executive session. No written minutes will be kept. No decisions will be made. See you all over there. Just, there he is. George, a second to come back. All right, so we're back in our regular session, returning from our executive session where we discussed the two items that were noticed and no decisions were made. No written minutes were kept. We'll start off with the consent agenda, 10 a.m. action session. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone wishes to have discussed individually? Brian?
Yeah, I think you might want to pull item 5 to read.
Okay. Meritorious service, that sounds good. Anything else?
I just have a comment on number 3. We don't need to pull it. I'll just say it right now. Just gratitude and a welcome to Gary Fassel, who will be appointed as our county surveyor.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a much needed role and not a very high paying one. So it's almost like a volunteer gig. Anything else? Hearing none, I'll just read the items. Item number 1, consideration approval of warrant register. Number 2, consideration approval of resolution 22-27, resolution authorizing the disposal of 2 Clear Creek County vehicles. Number 3, consideration approval of resolution 22-26, resolution appointing Gary Fasselt as county surveyor. Number 4, consideration approval of March 1st, 2022 Board of County Commissioners meeting minutes. Number 6, consideration approval of resolution 22-29, resolution ratifying the Clear Creek County fire ban enacted yesterday on April 21st. Sheriff Albers. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of number 5.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So item number 5, consideration approval of resolution 22-28, resolution of appreciation of meritorious service. Brian, would you mind reading that? Your name is on there too.
Sure. Our Human Resources Director, Kate Gramillion, is retiring. And we did write a resolution to recognize her 24 years of service to the county. I believe I think I see her on the list there watching, but a resolution in appreciation of Clear Creek County Human Resources Manager Kate Gramillion for over 24 years of meritorious service to Clear Creek County. Whereas Kate has served Clear Creek County for over 24 years, and the Clear Creek Board of County Commissioners desires to publicly recognize Kate's dedication to the county constituents and to past county commissioners. And whereas Kate has worked with 12 county commissioners, 2 sheriffs, 3 treasurers, 2 clerk and recorders, 1 assessor, 4 finance directors, 4 county attorneys, and 4 county managers. Wow. And whereas Kate was an amazing juggler overseeing some 240 employees, making sure they were signed up for health insurance, retirement plans, flex spending, legal plans, dental and vision, and don't forget the giant duck in the middle, Aflac. And whereas so many young employees came to work at the county for the first time and knew nothing about benefits and retirement, and Kate made sure to take the time with each one and explain how to register as well as why these benefits were so important. And whereas Kate brought the wellness plan to Clear Creek County staff, providing special benefits to staff, including ski passes, gym passes, life coaches, financial coaches, yoga classes, all in an effort to keep us healthy, productive. She knew if we were healthy, we would be a good group of workers. And whereas if there was a Guinness Book of World Records for knowing the most insurance companies or types of plans, Kate would win. During her tenure, we changed insurance brokers at least twice, health insurance companies at least 3 times, vision insurance at least 3 times, and only one steady constant, Delta Dental. This does not even count our multiple flex spending plans, short-term, long-term disability, life insurance, and other plans the rest of us never remember. And whereas many of us were lucky to not to have to have a day like Kate in Human Resources, which could have gone something like this. Good morning, Kate. Someone just quit and I need to provide them their paycheck by 11 a.m. this morning. Oh, and don't forget, we have new employee orientation at 9 a.m. for 3 hours and And oh, a Department of Transportation employee just showed up who needs to go to the doctor. And oh, I just changed bank accounts. Can we change all my paperwork to direct deposit my paycheck into the new bank before we get paid on Friday? And oh, can I get one of the ski passes from you? And I can't remember my password to get my clock in and out on the timesheet. So whereas Kate will enjoy not being on call 24/7 every week or working in the office until 7 p.m. And whereas Kate is leaving us for more free time hiking the trails and most likely focusing on herself instead of her 240 employees and their insurance plans. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Clear Creek Board of County Commissioners adopts this resolution of appreciation for meritorious service performed by Clear Creek County Human Resources Manager Kate. Be it further resolved that the original copy of the resolution be presented to Kate and that the resolution become part of the permanent record of Clear Creek County. And be it further resolved, Kate, you will be truly missed. Adopted this 22nd day of April, 2022 at a regularly scheduled meeting of the Clear Creek County Board of County.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Kate.
I just want to say, 24 years is a career. And the one thing that I always felt from you, Kate, is that you really took your job very seriously and advocated for all the employees. I remember the discussions that we had over the years about pay raises and all the research that you did, getting the right ranges from the resources down the hill, and just wish you the best in this next chapter of your life.
Yeah, I would like to thank you for working so hard to make sure that we had what we need to know. And working so hard on behalf of all of your, honestly, your fellow teammates to make sure that you advocated for them along the way too, to us. And they should know that.
Yeah, Sean and Randy said it well. And I know from a handful of personal interactions with you, or just one-on-one interactions with you, that you really stood up for the folks on this team and made sure that they were in an environment that was safe and that they felt respected. And just want to thank you for that. It's really important. Someone's got to be in an organization to stick up for people, and you filled that role really well.
Do you have any final comments for us, Kate?
No, I just wish you all well, and I hope things continue to get better.
Well, thanks a lot. I think we need a motion.
Rick, did you come on camera because you have something to say?
No, I was just gonna clap when it was all over. Kate's been a special ally for the sheriff's office, and I really appreciate all she's done.
Okay, I'll make the motion because I know just a minor typo where an equal sign was intended as a apostrophe in there. So I move we approve resolution 22-28 and authorize staff to just do one last proofread on this thing before it hits the record.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Awesome. We wish you well, Kate.
Thank you.
Oops. Okay, so moving to Suzanne. 10 o'clock session, consideration approval of resolution 22-24, resolution to adopt the 2022 Clear Creek County Annual Operating Plan, setting standard operating procedures, agreed procedures, and responsibilities to implement cooperative wildfire protection within Clear Creek County.
Slightly long title. Good morning. Yeah, this is the plan that you all review and approve every year. It has this year changed to a 5-year plan. So it still is being called an annual operating plan, but it's through 2026. And we can make changes in that 5-year period and reapprove if we need to. So this is the plan that the state division of DFPC, Division of Fire Prevention and Control, has with all of the counties across the state in order to figure out the approach and payment for wildland fire. So in looking at our forecast for today, and you've seen all up and down the Front Range in different parts of Colorado, the extreme fire possibility today. So we are looking to get that approved. So nothing much has changed from the plan that you all had approved from last year. There were a couple of federal details that our state partners changed in there to something was updated, but it doesn't really impact in any significance of what we're doing. All of the partners that are listed at the end of this plan that we will obtain signatures for have approved the plan. You all, as the commissioners, are going to be the first to sign it, and then everyone else will sign it. But through a meeting that the sheriff hosted, all of the partners, our federal partners, our state partners, CCFA, our fire authority, and Evergreen Fire, everyone has agreed to the plan. So that's what we're looking for. I will open it up to any questions. I don't know if I know that you do this every year, so I don't know if you need any sort of overview on it. It is a very, a very long plan in that you can see all the attachments, exhibits. Those are, maps and forms and all the things that the state has in their plans. But this will set us up real well for the next 5 years of how we operate together, the agreements that are made, and payments, and who funds what and who pays for what.
Sorry about that. I have one probably somewhat unrelated question.
Mhm.
A lot of the dialogue about fire risk has definitely taken center stage, at least in my community here in Evergreen. One of the things that is being brought up a lot is our what we can do to have a higher state of readiness when it comes to things like evacuations. And does this plan in any way kind of address that, or is there any other planning that we could be doing, maybe both tabletop and even possibly some field exercises to make sure that we are ready for whatever might happen?
Yeah, I will definitely, I see that the sheriff's on, and I will definitely want to hear from the sheriff if he has anything different from what I'm saying. So one, this plan doesn't talk about that kind of the preparedness part of individuals, in the sense that what this is how do all the different fire partners, cooperating partners, work together, and looking at county boundaries, Forest Service lines, and how that all works. So saying that, there are a couple things that the county and the fire authority are doing together right now to help people in their personal and neighborhood family preparedness. So one thing is that the fire authority and the sheriff's office together are printing out thousands of cards that one group will be mailed out to everyone in the county. A second group of cards, postcards will bring to all the meetings and different places that we go. What they are QR codes for people to sign up for two things: to sign up for Code Red and for HyperReach. Code Red is where the sheriff's office will issue any sort of evacuation orders or any notice of potential, kind of be prepared in case a notice comes out. Those are really important for folks to sign up for. We have yet a third method to contact people where it contacts all the cell phones in a specific area that you draw on a map. That, though, is kind of the very top tier of something that we would use for a notification. That is something that we get, we have to work through the federal government for that. So what we're going to rely on in the county is Code Red and HyperReach. So those two things we want folks to sign up for. The second part of that about any sort of evacuation tabletop or workshop, we've been talking about those types of things with Evergreen Fire, but Rick, I see that you've come on. I'd really like to defer that conversation to the sheriff's office to give you any further information on that.
We're working closely with Evergreen Fire. They had a meeting, I think it was Wednesday. You were there, Suzanne, weren't you?
Yep.
They're setting up tabletops, evacuations, this type of stuff. I know Jeremy Jones is working on the west end of the county to do the same thing. So that's in progress right now. The mitigation stuff, Jeremy's doing a lot on mitigation, so is Suzanne. So we're taking steps forward in those areas to try to mitigate a bunch of this stuff and also get evacuation routes, working closely with Evergreen Fire and CCFA to get that accomplished. And like Suzanne, the flyers are going to go out hopefully by May, 1st of May. And we already got 16,000 people signed up for Code Red. So we might push out a test around the 1st of May just to see if people have moved and don't want those notifications anymore, but get a baseline for what does sign up in the future. That way we can kind of have a guesstimate on what people are interested in. So there are things in work. The AOP does not have anything to do with evacuations or mitigation or anything like that. So, but we are CCFA and Evergreen Fire, and we're working together with them to get some of that stuff going.
Thank you. And I guess one question that sort of begs to me is, if we have 10,000 people in the county and 16,000 are signed up for Code Red, how does that work?
Well, it could be husband and wife, people that have BRBOs or whatever they're called. But a lot, if there's 10,000 people living here, that means we have actually, I don't know. And some of the outskirts of Jeffco has signed up for Code Red just because they're close to the county line. And if we have something that they probably want to know.
Yeah, Upper Bear, places like that. All right, that makes sense. Thanks. Any, George, Randy, anything about this plan or the discussion we just had?
Just one question for me. I mean, the plan looks good. I don't see a lot of changes. I see an attachment here called the Fire Investigation Report. And I'm curious, who's responsible for filling that out and where does it go? And if you don't have an immediate answer, it's a huge document. You can get me an answer down the road. It's a question I've had. We've had some fires here in Clear Creek and I haven't seen these investigation reports. And I guess I'll just state that I would like to.
It probably starts with the fire authority or the main fire, and then the sheriff's office will come in and do their own investigation. And if we have enough evidence or suspect information or something like this, then we'll call in CBI or the state. What is it? The state forest or not? CFPD, or I don't know what it is.
Oh, DFPC, Division of Fire Prevention Control, the state. I know.
They have some arson investigators that'll assist us and stuff like that. So that's kind of the flow. It all depends on how bad it is and if there's any evidence. Because fire, you could prove arson, but everything burns up. So getting the conviction on it is really, really hard.
Okay, so it's mostly around trying to figure out if arson was involved. That makes sense. And what do we, since we're talking about it, and I don't want to take much time, but maybe just a brief answer. I've seen out of some other fires and other areas pretty comprehensive looking after action reports related to fires. Does this agreement lay out a process for that?
I don't know if the agreement does. The internal policies of the sheriff's office, we have, our report flow and stuff like this. But I don't know if we have really a comprehensive end of report that we can give everybody.
Okay. I know, usually like I see them around, fires where a lot of structures were lost, and we've been lucky to not have, in my recollection, a fire where more than a couple structures were lost. So maybe that's it. But anyway, I was just kind of curious. That's all from me.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we put this to a vote?
Seems like that's a no. I'll go ahead and make a motion if you think that's appropriate, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thanks.
Move we approve resolution 22-24 to adopt the 22 Clear Creek County annual operating plan.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks, Sheriff. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks so much.
I think we're done with our regularly scheduled business. I believe we have a couple of other topics to discuss in executive session. So I move the board moves to executive session to discuss the following matters.
Sorry, I had to unmute that and I have to open it back up. Give me 1 second, please. All right, sorry about that. For pursuant to CRS 24640224B&E for the county attorney to meet with the Board of County Commissioners for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions pertaining to the status, configuration, and organizational structure of the Clear Creek County Mountain Youth Network, and determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with regard to establishing a new or modified framework for operation of the Mountain Youth Network.
Second.
Are we going, did you mention the follow-on discussion for the IGA also?
Oh, I didn't realize that we were coming back on that, but if that's the case, we will be coming back on the second item that I previously read regarding the fire authority and the discussion of the IGA.
Okay, thanks. And Randy seconded.
I'm in the second to.
Okay. All in favor? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Board will now move into executive session. No written minutes will be kept. No decisions will be made. And then we'll come back at the end of that to close out this public meeting, but there will not be any further content when we get back. So I think our next scheduled meeting is a couple Tuesdays from now. So we'll see everybody then.
Thanks.